Unexpected talks are resurfacing in Europe and the United States about arranging a meeting between Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and Vladimir Zelensky as soon as this month. Although earlier, both from the United States and from Russia, there was rhetoric that no meeting would take place. Nevertheless, today in Europe it was announced that at the G20 summit at the end of November, a meeting of the three leaders is still being planned. And you won't believe who is becoming the mediator in preparing such negotiations. It's the countries of Central Asia, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. The leaders of these countries have already met with the Europeans. Next, they are heading to the United States of America to meet with Trump, and from there, the president of Kazakhstan is flying to Moscow to meet with Putin. And all these trips are scheduled before the G20 summit in Johannesburg, where this meeting between Trump, Putin and Zelensky could take place. And now Trump himself is once again publicly praising Putin, saying that he is a tough leader and not someone to mess with. Trump also says that Russia is now seeking contact with Washington on its own, because it really wants to do business with America. Trump is also confident that the war in Ukraine can be ended in the coming months if everything goes according to plan. Meanwhile, Ukraine is getting more Storm Shadow missiles. And NATO experts insist that the war has reached a stalemate, and Putin will not be able to achieve any significant victory for himself. My name is Alexei Peachy. Let's discuss this topic together, but before we start this episode, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, give it a like, and leave any comment you want. Also, subscribe to my Telegram channel, Peachy Newson. The link to it is in the description of this video. There we publish breaking news as it comes in. And friends, if you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation using the links and details provided. In the description of this video, it says support the channel Alexei Peachy. Choose any format that's convenient for you. I will be grateful for any support from you, whether it's a donation, sponsorship, or a subscription. So it looks like they're trying to organize a meeting between Trump and Putin again. Today, the president of Finland and a close friend of Donald Trump, Alexander Stubb, stated that the next potential opportunity for talks between the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of the United States, Donald Trump, and the Russian dictator, Vladimir Putin, could be the G20 summit, which will take place on November 21-22 in Johannesburg. That's South Africa. According to Stubb, although there are no signs of a quick ceasefire or truce yet, behind-the-scenes work is actually ongoing. There are just a lot of non-public negotiation channels. This is where things get interesting. Alexander Stubb clarified that last week it was actually behind the scenes. He discussed the situation regarding Russia's war against Ukraine with the president of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, and the president of Uzbekistan, Shavkat Mirziyoyev. But then, the leaders of these two countries are supposed to meet with the President of the United States, Donald Trump, on Thursday, and then the President of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, will meet with Vladimir Putin. And according to Stubb, it is Tokayev who could become that very negotiator, a sort of intermediary between the Kremlin and the West, who could lay the groundwork for a future meeting in Johannesburg. According to him, Finland's approach to the war in Ukraine remains unchanged. Military and economic pressure on Russia needs to be increased in order to force Putin to come to the negotiating table. And according to Stubb, a possible meeting may arise. An opportunity for a meeting will come up at the end of this month in South Africa. Quote, "If over the next 2 or 3 weeks the situation develops as expected, then perhaps the G20 summit in Johannesburg will become the place for a meeting between Putin, Zelensky and Trump." At the same time, neither Stubb nor other experts see the possibility of a meeting between Trump and Putin before the G20 summit, since they cancelled their meeting in Budapest. And in general, there isn't much time left until the G20 summit, just 3 weeks. And that's why it all comes down to the Republic of South Africa. Zelensky, by the way, has repeatedly stated his readiness for a trilateral meeting with United States President Donald Trump and the bold dictator Vladimir Putin. But he emphasized that Ukraine will not accept conditions imposed by the Kremlin. And also, at the beginning of September, Putin supposedly also confirmed his readiness for negotiations. But like a real thug, like a street punk. He insisted that Zelensky should come to Moscow and be ready for discussions, but Zelensky made it clear that he would not go to either Russia or Belarus. And now Trump himself, it seems to me, is starting to signal that a meeting might happen, but now he's doing it differently. Indirectly, Trump started by calling Xi Jinping and Putin strong and smart leaders who shouldn't be underestimated. Quote, "Both are tough, both are smart, both are very strong leaders. You can't joke around with them, you have to take them very seriously. They don't walk in and say, 'What a great day, the sun is shining, it's beautiful.' These are serious people, they're tough and smart leaders." Later, Trump stated that the war in Ukraine could possibly be resolved in a short time, in about a few months. And he immediately added that, in his opinion, Moscow is seeking to restore contacts with Washington. Trump stated that the head of the Kremlin, Vladimir Putin, wants to do business with the United States of America. And he believes that this desire could force Moscow to end the war against Ukraine in the coming months. During an interview on Columbia Broadcasting System News, Trump once again emphasized that he supposedly inherited Russia's war against Ukraine from Joe Biden and that he put an end to it. Here's a quote. "Do you know how I stopped them? In many cases, in 60% of cases, I said if you don't stop, I'll impose tariffs on both of your countries and you won't be able to do business with the United States." The host then asked, "If this works, why doesn't it work on Putin in the war against Ukraine?" To this, Donald Trump said that in his opinion, all of this works, we just haven't seen it yet. Quote, "I think it works with Putin. I handled him a little differently because we don't have that much business with Russia, to be honest. You know, he's not someone who buys a lot from us, basically, because of foolishness, and I think he'd like to change that. I think he wants to improve relations, he wants to trade with us, he wants to make a lot of money for Russia, and I think that's great. That's what I like." Well, we'll see. So, Trump is once again insisting that it's absolutely beneficial for Russia to end the war against Ukraine and then do business with Americans and make money. How applicable that is when we're talking about Vladimir Putin's deranged regime, I don't know. That's a complicated question. Well, meanwhile, the British government is sending Ukraine a new batch of Storm Shadow missiles to ensure continued strikes on military targets in Russia this winter. Actually, it's not just sending them, it has already delivered them. According to Bloomberg, the deliveries were made in an unspecified quantity, but their purpose is to ensure that Ukraine has a stockpile of precision weapons during a period when London expects increased Russian attacks on civilian infrastructure. Amid increased sanctions pressure on Russia, the United Kingdom and other allies are seeking to show the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin that support for Kyiv will remain unwavering and will surpass the Russian economy's ability to wage war. But I also admit that you might know. London's new move was a response to United States President Donald Trump's refusal to provide Ukraine with Tomahawk missiles. And it's no secret that Storm Shadow missiles have long been used to strike Russian territory. Basically, these missiles have long crossed Putin's so-called red lines and nothing really new has happened. And in NATO as well. NATO has begun supporting negotiations, especially through Admiral Giuseppe Christopher, chairman of the NATO Military Committee. But Dragon stated that the war between Russia and Ukraine has essentially reached a stalemate, and the Kremlin's attempts to gain an advantage have ended in strategic defeat. And Dragoni stated that NATO will stand with Ukraine until the day, quote, "we bring it to the negotiating table for a lasting peace." He also pointed out the fact that Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022 led to two more countries, Finland and Sweden, joining NATO. Admiral Dragon called the war a strategic failure for the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. Despite the recent slow and gradual progress of the Russians on the battlefield, most importantly, as he says, the Russians remain. How will they get a friendly or puppet government in Kyiv like what happened in Belarus? Putin simply won't succeed in this, Dragon is sure. I'll leave it at that. Friends, share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care, goodbye, more to come.